A walk through the valley of the shadow of death, my COVID-19 story, part 6, the lessons of my brush with COVID. With no one 2 meters or 6 feet of me, I can remove my nose-mouth covering or face mask. I always wear the face mask at the beginning of each of these series because it is second only to vaccination in the effort to bring the pandemic under control and ultimately to an end. So there it goes. There are a number of lessons to be drawn from my brush with coronavirus disease 2019. Lesson number 1, the COVID-19 pandemic is for real. If ever you doubted it or listened to the numerous conspiracy theories, stop. It is a highly contagious disease that readily and rapidly spreads when people without a protective barrier, like the face mask, get in close proximity, 2 meters or 6 feet of one another. And the infected person could pass it on to another person, or in a mass gathering situation to many, 2, 10, 20 or more people. It is global, affecting all corners of the earth where people have come in contact with an infected person actively shedding the virus. Lesson number 2. Anyone could be infected and spread the virus regardless of appearance, handsome, beautiful, or ugly, social status, educated or illiterate, rich or poor, creed or religious belief, race, white, black, yellow, pink, or green if humans had such a skin color. It is difficult to tell by observation who has COVID-19 infection. It cannot be spot diagnosed, as we say in medical parlance. This is made possible by the ability of COVID to masquerade or to mimic other conditions like malaria, the common cold, urinary tract, respiratory tract, and other infections, hence the ease with which it assumed the current pandemic proportions. Only testing, the antigen and the PCR tests, can definitively identify COVID-19 infection status, not appearance. Lesson number 3. A person with an active infection can potentially pass it on even when their symptoms have subsided. This includes the so-called symptomless carriers, though I doubt that there are indeed true asymptomatics. Most of those infected must at some stage have had symptoms misdiagnosed as some other condition which had abated by the time of their testing positive, and therefore they are being classified as asymptomatics. Lesson number 4, testing. For as long as the pandemic continues, testing is the only way of identifying whether or not one contracted COVID-19 following illness after exposure to a high-risk situation. Testing helps inform treatment regime, as well as the taking of measures to prevent passing the virus on to others. Lesson number 5. Avoid mass gatherings at all costs. Pending the successful vaccination of a critical number of the global population, the only way to stay safe is to avoid unprotected close contact with individuals from other households. Given the inevitable agitation elicited by mass gatherings, it is near impossible to observe the wearing of protective gear and the other pandemic control protocols in such environment, and so avoid contracting the virus. Therefore, to the extent that it is possible, it is best to avoid gatherings, mass gatherings, the so-called super spreaders, pre-pandemic era type funerals, weddings, sporting tournaments, religious services. Their designation as super spreaders is wholly appropriate. Indeed, they are super spreader events. However, should attendance of such events be absolutely inevitable, then the face mask, followed by hand hygiene, use of sanitizers, wipes, and washing, keeping a reasonable distance of at least 2 meters from people from other households in such events, though an uphill task, remain a must if one is to avoid contracting the virus. But always remember, always bear in mind that the 1, 2, or 3 hours of entertainment or excitement or feeling of euphoria that you will experience at a super spreader event is not worth the 2 weeks of ill health and loneliness of quarantine, the discomfort of the several nasal and throat swabs for COVID-19 testing, the financial burden, or worse, the possible lifelong scarring or loss of your life, leaving loved ones bereaved, in shambles. It is not worth it. Lesson number 6. Quantum prayer is a bulwark against the ravages of the virus, the so-called residual damages caused by COVID-19. I am living proof of this and will share the details in part 6. I'll stop here. God bless you and those dear to you. Amen. I am Dr. Charles Wambeme Obasi.